Good evening. We're back with more Marvel Champions, and this evening will be a card review of the Drax Hero Pack. So far, the Guardians have been so-so. Groot was weak, Rocket was okay, Star-Lord and Gamora were decent, but not S tier. And so we'll see where Drax clocks in. We're always hoping to find a new hero that will be interesting, fun to play, and that will allow us to take on higher difficulties. I know a lot of players don't like overpowered heroes, but I feel like higher difficulties offer a new level of complexity and play and offer new life to old scenarios. And so I like finding new heroes that are powerful or new cards that can make old heroes powerful, and I haven't seen that too much this cycle. Gamora and Star-Lord certainly fun, but not S tier. The last really strong hero we saw was Scarlet Witch, and she's not S tier in solo play, in my opinion. So it's been a while since Ant-Man, who was the last S tier hero. Anyway, let's take a look at Drax. 4 recovery, 6 hand size, 14 HP. After you change to this form, remove all vengeance counters from Drax. Heal 2 damage from him for each vengeance counter removed this way. Okay, that doesn't mean anything until we see the vengeance counters and what they do. Drax, 1/1/2 stats. Drax gets +1 attack for each vengeance counter on him. After the villain attacks Drax, place 1 vengeance counter here to a maximum of 3. If you cannot draw 1 card. Hand size 4. Ouch. That hurts. Well, just based on the hand size alone, very unlikely Drax is going to be any good. It takes a lot to compensate for that. -1 card in your hand every round for the whole game. And so Drax builds his vengeance counters by having the villain attack him. Doesn't say after the villain attacks you. It says after the villain attacks Drax, which means you have to have him defend, which means you don't have his basic ability available for other things while you're charging him up. Not off to a promising start, I would say, but let's take a look at his hero cards. Mantis, 2 cost, 2 thwart, 1 attack. Exhaust Mantis and deal 1 damage to her. Heal 3 damage from an identity. Okay, that's a strong ally, a very strong ally. That's I'd put her up there with Nebula. So that's good. She's very good. Very strong ally. Get a lot of value for her cost. Fight Me Coward. 0 cost, ready your hero and draw 1 card. The villain attacks you. Okay, it helps you build vengeance tokens. Assuming you want the villain to happen, that's a decent amount of value for 1 card with 0 cost. If you don't want the villain to attack you, it's terrible. So you need to be in a position where you really want a villain attack. And you'll be wanting to defend against that attack with Drax. But outside of that, this isn't good. I mean, it does say the villain attacks you and not Drax, so you could use once you have Drax charged up, you could still use this to get an extra basic attack for 4 and have a minion chump block it. That would be mostly if you were going for a finishing blow, I think. Or putting the villain on the clock, so to speak, where his defeat is certain, but it's going to take you a round or 2 to make it happen. So, yeah, it's synergistic. It provides decent value in a situation where you actually want the villain to attack you. Intimidation, 1 cost event. Remove X threat from a scheme where X is equal to your attack. That's great. If your attack is 4, it's okay. If your attack is 3, it's not very good if it's 2 or 1. So this is a bad card early game. It's good once you get Drax charged up. Knife Leap, 3 cost. Reduce the cost to play this card by 1 for each vengeance counter on Drax. So you can make it free. When you make a basic attack, you get +5 attack for that attack. That attack gains overkill and piercing. Well, if you can make this free and you have your basic attack available, this is a great card. If it costs 1, it's still a great card. If it costs 2, it's not so good, but it's playable. If it costs 3, it's not good at all. It's not going to be so easy, though, to charge up Drax to full and then have your basic attack available, because to charge up Drax to full, you have to have him take 3 attacks, and that costs his basic action, and we haven't seen a way for Drax to ready himself consistently. He does have Fight Me, Coward, but that's an event. He needs something like Doctor Strange's Cloak of Levitation or Iron Man's Arc Reactor. Parry. 0 cost event. When you would take any amount of damage, prevent X of that damage, where X is equal to double your attack. Okay, so this is fine if it blocks 2. It's great if it blocks 4. It's phenomenal if it blocks 8. So this is a good card. Its downside is low. Its upside is high. I like it. It's a good card. That'll be very helpful for surviving long enough to build the vengeance counters. Payback. After the villain attacks you, deal X damage to the villain where X is equal to your attack. If you get 4 for this, it's great. If you get 3 for this, it's pretty good. If you get 2 or 1, it's not that great. So once again, not very good early game, but great late game. Once you get Drax with a full head of steam, he does seem good, but the hand size is always going to be a problem. Drax's Knife, a 1 cost upgrade. While in hero form, Drax gets +1 attack. That's great. That's a good cost for this card. 1. It's a good card at that cost and very helpful for all of his other abilities. It synergizes because they all go off of his attack. Drax's other knife. While in hero form, Drax gains Retaliate 1. Costs 1. That's another great upgrade. Very good at that cost of 1. I like it. Twythiet Mastery. 1 cost upgrade after Drax makes a basic attack. Draw 1 card. Well, again, it's not going to be very good early because early you're going to be wanting to use Drax's basic action to defend so that you can build vengeance counters. But once you get those built up and you're making basic attacks, this is going to be a good card. And Too Stubborn to Die, a 2 cost upgrade. When Drax would be defeated, instead set his hit point dial to 4 and change him to alter ego form, and remove this card from the game. So that's going to remove your vengeance counters if you do that. So you have to reset and start all over. It's a pretty slow card in solo play, probably just delays an inevitable loss. And it seems similar in functionality to Captain America's helmet, which I've actually never used in a game before. I think I've played it, but never actually needed to use it or used it. It could save you from a loss from time to time. Would it turn that loss into a win? Once in a blue moon, perhaps. Well, Drax's hero cards. There's 2 problems. A, the villain has to attack Drax for the vengeance counters to build up. That means you have to run protection in order to survive those attacks. If you run protection, how do you remove threat? You have 1 threat removal card. It's bad early game. You can't run Justice. You need Mantis probably to do her healing. Protection doesn't have a lot of threat removal. That seems like a big problem. And combined with the hand size of 4, I don't think we're looking at a very good hero for solo play here. Probably one of the weakest. Maybe down there with Groot and Hulk. Fun thematic attack hero. He's a fun thematic attack hero like Hulk, but very limited threat reduction capability. and very limited deck building options. A couple of changes I would make to Drax to balance him. I would remove the caveat that the villain attacks Drax. I would just say after the villain attacks you, and put his hand size at 5, and then I think he'd be just fine. He'd probably be pretty decent. With Groot, I would fix him in a somewhat similar way. I would eliminate the forced response on his hero card that removes his growth counters, and then I think he'd be just fine, perhaps even decent, but not overpowered. And I think the same thing with Drax at hand size 5. And if the villain could just attack you, then you could play leadership with him or whatever aspect you wanted to play, and he'd be pretty good. I don't know if he'd be top tier. He might be. I don't think he'd be overpowered, though, because he lacks crowd control, and he lacks any kind of way to reliably ready himself, like Doctor Strange has. So I don't think he would be overpowered, and he'd be much more playable. As he is, I think he's quite weak. Four cost, 1 threat, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health. After Martyr, takes consequential damage from performing an attack. If that attack defeated an enemy, give her a tough status card. That's very good. So you can go attack, gain a tough status card, attack, gain a tough status card. And then after that, tank another boss attack. That's one of the best allies in the game. That would be a must-include ally from the protection aspect for me. Very, very strong ally. Moon Dragon, 3 cost, 1/1/2 health. Exhaust and discard Moon Dragon. Choose a minion. That minion attacks another minion of your choice. Another enemy of your choice. It can attack a boss. Interesting. Could you get enough value out of that to cover the 4 cost? Let's say best case, 1 minion attacks and kills another enemy minion. How is that any different from just having like 3 attack or 2 attack? Nah. Given that you have to exhaust and discard this card, I don't think it's very strong. Nah, I don't think this is very strong at all. A lot of the value of allies comes from defending boss attacks, so anything that takes away from that has to provide value sufficient to compensate for it. And I don't think this does usually, unless there's some specific enemies that this card has in mind, that they had in mind for this card to counter, but nothing comes to my mind immediately. I don't think this is very strong, though it is very interesting. Counterpunch we've certainly seen before. Deflection. 2 cost, when an identity would take any amount of damage from an attack, prevent up to 5 of that. Discard cards from the top of your deck equal to the amount prevented this way. So 2 cost plus the card and you prevent 5 damage. It's a little under powered. I would rather it gives 6 damage prevention. 2 plus the card is expensive. It means you'd start your next turn with only 2 cards in hand. That would certainly be a pretty weak turn, so I don't see myself running this. I'd rather run Never Back Down, Desperate Defense, those kinds of cards. Hard Knocks, 3 cost, deal 4 damage to an enemy. If that enemy is defeated by this attack, give your hero a tough status card. It's good value if you can make use of all 4 of the attack. If you're overkilling an enemy in order to get your tough status card, then this isn't very good. It's overcosted. But if you need exactly 4 damage on a minion, to defeat it, and you can do that and then give your hero a tough status card, then this is pretty good. I think that situation isn't going to happen that often, though. I think most often, if you want your tough status card, you'll be having some of the damage go to waste, in which case the card costs too much. Leading Blow, 0 cost event. When your hero makes a basic attack, discard the top card of the encounter deck, reduce your hero's attack for that attack by the number of printed boost icons on that card. If that attack still deals damage, ready your hero. Okay. Well, you'd need a lot of attack on your basic attack to make this any good. If you use this with like Gamora, for example, you attack for 2. If you get 2 boost icons, this actually does nothing. You just wasted a card for nothing. If you get 1 boost icon, you only dealt 1 damage. And it's essentially 0 cost for 1 damage. So I guess this is meant to be used with Drax. With Drax, this would probably be like 2 damage, but sometimes you would get 3 or 4. Sometimes you'd get 1 if you were fully charged up. This is interesting with Drax. If he were fully charged up, would this card be good? It's got kind of high variance. And you only get to ready your hero if the attack still deals damage, so if no damage get through, then this is just actively bad. I think you'd need a fully charged up Drax to make this make sense. I think a lot of the time it'd be pretty mediocre. Occasionally it'd be really good. Would I run it? It might be worth trying. I certainly don't think it's exceptional, but it might be worth trying. I'd have to know the average boost amount on an encounter card, I think, to really say. But off the top of my head, sometimes, maybe. I'd probably run it in Drax. We'll have to see how reliably we can get Drax up to 3 Vengeance counters. If that can't happen reliably, then absolutely not to this card. But if it can, okay, it could be worth a slot. Subdue. When an enemy initiates an attack, that enemy gets -3 attack for that attack. I'd rather run Never Give Up, or Never Back Down, or whatever it is, and then Desperate Defense. And would we run Subdue on top of that as well? I don't think so. 1 cost plus the card for -3 attack isn't enough. I don't think. Indomitable we've seen before. Gamora. Ally version of Gamora. 3 cost, 1 thwart, 2 attack. Play only if your identity has the Guardian trait. After Gamora attacks or thwarts, discard cards from the top of your deck until you discard an event. Then add that card to your hand. Well, it depends on how many events you're running. If you discard half of your deck, that's terrible. If you don't have to discard much at all, then this is pretty good. This is a very high value ally if you don't have to discard many cards. I think I would definitely run her if my identity has the Guardian trait. Same as all of the Guardian allies that I've seen so far. They've all been pretty good. I like them. I'd run them all. We'll run Gamora, Groot, and Rocket Raccoon in the Drax deck. We haven't seen an ally version of Star-Lord, but maybe we will. Like in the Venom pack, or who knows. Athletic Conditioning we've seen before. And is that everything? I don't think so. No, we've still got Aggression, Justice, and Leadership cards. At least 1. So the Aggression card is Bring It, 0 cost. 1 per phase, draw 1 card for each minion engaged with you. That's a great card. I would include I would include 3 in every aggression deck. That's a very good card. Very good addition to the aggression aspect, which needs a lot of help. Currently, I like Justice and Leadership the best. Probably still Leadership. But Justice is up there for certain champions. Protection has made improvements. Aggression's probably the worst, but this card helps. This is a good card. Provides a lot of value. Think Fast, 1 cost event. Play only if your identity has the Guardian trait. Did the aggression card require that as well? No, it can be used with anybody. So for Think Fast, we take 1 damage and confuse the villain. That's slightly too bad to play. Unless you can combo cards that do well with confusion. It's a hero action, so you can't use it in your alter ego form. It's just a little bit too weak to play. If it was 1 cost for confusing a villain, I'd think it was great. The take 1 damage part has me thinking, probably not. Unless I had some way to combo, like some card that benefits from a enemy being confused or the villain being confused. But otherwise, probably I won't run this. I don't know though, 1 cost confuse is tempting. But we just don't want to be in alter ego form that much. This could make sense in Rocket Raccoon though. Because he really needs to flip to alter ego from time to time in order to cycle out his old tech upgrades. And so even though this card's a little bit inefficient, it could still make sense in Rocket Raccoon. Though I think Rocket really needs to run Leadership in order to have allies to block for him because he's so squishy. Regroup. 1 cost support. When an ally is defeated by an enemy attack, return it to its owner's hand instead of discarding it. When the round ends, discard this card. Okay, so you put it on the table and then you can return any allies that are defeated that turn to the owner's hand. You don't have to play them again, so you essentially could use this to generate a resource for each ally that returns to your hand. If you can do this with 2 allies, this is a great card. If you can do this with 1 ally, it depends on the ally. This is interesting. I like this card. Obviously, it makes sense to use it on a deck with a lot of allies, but that's every Leadership deck. Oh, but the ally has to be defeated by an enemy attack. I did not notice that part. In that case, no, I don't really like this. Because it forces you to use your allies a little bit inefficiently in order to make it work. And that's going to offset the value of the card. So 1 ally will get returned after a boss attack, that's great. Then if you wanted to use this more than once, you'd have to have your allies tank minion attacks. And that's not really what you'd like them to be doing. Toward the end of their life, you'd like them to be taking boss attacks. So you have to use them a little bit inefficiently in order to use this card, and that's going to offset the gains that the card will give you. Enhanced Physique we've seen, and that will do it. Memories of Another Life. Is that what Drax looked like? Anyway. Some very strong protection allies in Drax. We saw a couple of strong protection allies in Star-Lord as well. Or not protection allies, but strong leadership allies in Star-Lord. In Adam Warlock and Beta Ray Bill. these allies that are coming with these hero packs may be the biggest reasons to get them outside of fun thematic reasons, because while I think these heroes are strong, they're not top tier. And so if you already have top tier heroes, the only reason that you're buying strong heroes is because you like the heroes or you want some variety, but you're not going to like defeat new difficulties of scenarios that you've never been able to defeat before, I don't think. But we will play test Drax and withhold final judgment until after we see him in action. So, thank you for watching.